Hey y'all, so I thought I'd do a second video, and I'm doing this right after I did the first video that you saw a few days ago, because I just felt like doing another one. So if you didn't see that video, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so I feel like painting my face or arranging my hair, but I just thought I would talk for a second about something that I think is super important, and that is putting ourselves on a pedestal. So I think this is super prevalent in our culture today, particularly with, why do I always say that word? That word is continually, I mess it up. Anyway, particularly in our social media culture. It's so easy to, what's going on with my face? It's so easy to compare ourselves to others, and I feel like we know about that. And we know about airbrushing, we know about editing videos, we know about, people doing videos generally present their best self in their clean house. And if we're continually comparing ourselves to that, we're probably falling short a lot of the times. And I feel like we're pretty much aware of that, at least overtly. I think maybe not so much really at deeper levels where we're probably still doing that. At least I catch myself doing that and comparing my whole to somebody's curated self sometimes. And, even though, like you, I'm sure I very much know better than to do that. But I think sometimes we don't really consider putting ourselves on a pedestal and how devastating that can be. And I think that is a reason why a lot of times people are hard to get along with, why we can be hard to get along with, why we become defensive and feel like we have to protect ourselves. I know this is true for me. And so by putting ourselves on a pedestal, I mean that we want to think of ourselves in a certain way. We want to have certain opinions of ourselves, and we sort of project that onto other people. We want them to have opinions about us, and we want to look a certain way, and we want to come across a certain way. And it may not be that you want to be perfect, but maybe you want to be perceived in a certain way. And sometimes if you go a little bit deeper and you look at that and you say, I don't even really care about that, but why do I see myself kind of presenting myself in this way? Because I want people to view me in a certain way. If I really don't care, why am I doing that? And for me, the answer, if I go deeper, is that I want to see myself in a certain light. I want to perceive myself in a certain way. And that, I think, is really one of the roots that we don't often look at. And if we're comparing ourselves to other people and or trying to present ourselves so that we are compared in a positive light, then we're sort of missing. It's like, okay, we can sort of try to address that, but it's like pulling out a weed without getting rid of the root, that it's just going to come back, because really what's under that is we want to look at ourselves and perceive ourselves in a certain manner. So if we're not showing up in the way that we want to perceive ourselves, we sort of have this denial or like a blind spot, or we get really angry and defensive if someone shows up or criticizes us or shows us something, mirrors to us something in some way that we then have to see ourselves in a light that we don't want to be seen in, that we don't want to see ourselves in. So I've seen myself and other people just fight to the death to argue against this, and instead of taking a look at, why is this triggering me so much? Why am I so upset about this person's opinion? Because this is just their opinion. It might not even be about me, but people will get really upset, and sometimes I will get really upset about things that people might say or do. And if I look deeper, sometimes it's because it's creating a mirror for me and a situation that is, making me look at myself in a way that I don't want to be seen. So one example, I remember being at an intensive with Gazlalo, and I was doing work with her, and she would have these weekends that were intensive workshops or a few days, and we would go. And I remember this girl there, this woman, Tracy, and Tracy just bugged me, and I was like, oh, I don't know, Tracy just bugs me. And then I got paired with Tracy on an activity where we were pairing up, and I was talking to her, and so it turns out I really bugged her too. And so I don't remember exactly what happened, but at some point I got really curious about it, and I'm like, and we talked about it. And what was so interesting was that what bothered me about her and what bothered her about me were the same things. And what we discovered was that we were actually fighting against things that we viewed negatively about ourselves. It was such a light bulb, life-changing moment for me, because I never would have guessed that had I not dug deeper, been forced to pair up with her, and for some reason we both were like open enough to just say it and talk about it and discover, oh my gosh, we bug each other because we are mirrors for each other of things we don't want to see about ourselves. It was, I can't tell you, it was mind-blowing. And from then on, she became like one of my favorite people, because we could like talk about this stuff, and it revealed to me things I hadn't seen about myself. And in a big picture way, it revealed to me the ways in which I don't want to see myself, or I want to see myself on the flip side, and how stupid all of that is, like holding up this image of ourselves. I had someone say to me the other day, we were talking about, of all things, my sexual history. And this person said to me, I just can't believe that you would do that. This thing we were talking about, right? And I was like, what are you talking about? You've done that 1,000 times. And he was like, to my like 2, right? And he's like, yeah, but I'm a man, and that act isn't special for me. I'll just do that with anybody, but you're like the prize. And I kind of scratched my head and was like, that's not cool. Like, putting me on a pedestal isn't anything, isn't like, what are we doing here, you know? And we had a conversation about that. But I think this is something that's like so important to look at in a bunch of different aspects, different ways that affect us. And as women, I don't have to tell you, right? If you're a woman, and probably if you're a man too, that women, are valued for certain traits, right? Or are expected to be a certain way. And femininity is both like honored and also has been used as a mechanism to keep women down as well. And I just want to mention here that if you even just, and I'm not an expert, but even if you just scratch the surface of gender studies, you see that any one characteristic of femininity has, if you go back far enough or go to a different area in the world, that characteristic will have flip-flopped to have been a characteristic thought of as a masculine characteristic. And not that there's just, obviously it's on a spectrum, right? Gender roles are on a spectrum, but they're largely culturally determined. So how was I bringing that in? Why did I go there? Just a sec. It'll come back to me, I'm sure. It's so funny. Like, I'll watch my videos and I'll be like, oh my God, how did I get off? And like, how did I not realize to go back on? But my mind gets going on this other direction. I'm sure you get it. But maybe it was just that that characteristics that are typically, at least recently typically, attributed to femininity can be things that are not really positive for the people they're attributed to. Like that conversation I had with this person. Okay, on one hand, you're a prize. That's, thank you. But also that sort of denies me, like, my response was, I am a human being and I have desires and needs like any other human being. I'm not, some kind of person on a statue that, like, is this feminine, and I feel like often in the quote-unquote spiritual community, femininity is something that is talked about a lot of times by men, mind you, and not always in a way that's negative to women, but sometimes in that community it's really kind of hailed as this like set of characteristics that you should abide by as a woman, and that if you're not, then you're somehow not feminine. And I really I hate that, because I think that yes, while women in general, because they've been under a patriarchal system, have learned to adopt masculine ways of being, because that's how the world worked, and that's how you gain traction in the world is to work within the system that's there. So yes, that is absolutely there. Oh my God, I got off again. So this is where, like, I'm not feeling great today too. Wow. Well, I don't remember exactly, but putting those traits on women and saying that, you're not feminine if you do these things is like, and it is mostly, I hear, coming from men, some women as well. But how about we really just connect to who we are not in ideas, not in our brain about who we are. How about we really just feel into, get to know ourselves as women, as men too, as whoever you are. Really just get to know who you are. What are your preferences and why? Are those things you want to work with? Are those things you want to change? Are they just kind of core features? Are they just things that you like? Ways of being, like, how about if those are just who we are as a person, and it's not this push for femininity to look like a certain thing. Like, maybe I don't want to wear a flowered dress, or like have traditional emotional roles in any one moment. Like, I don't want to be thinking about, is this a traditional female role? Or is this a more masculine? It's just like, yeah, certainly I want to look at, where have I adopted a masculine way of being because I had to do that, and where do I want to peel that away and look at, is this really authentic for me? Absolutely. But also, can I just be a whole person? Like, that for me is a bigger picture of just being whoever we are, and not trying to like measure up with anything or compare anything or put ourselves on some pedestal of femininity or anything else, and just really kind of sink into who we feel ourselves to be, not as ideas, but in terms of how we experience ourselves in our life and in our desires and our preferences, and not that the persona is the end all be all. Because it isn't. I mean, it's not the ultimate truth. But how about if we're talking on that level about roles and putting people on pedestals? Let's look at where we're doing that to ourselves and maybe take ourselves down from that. And I'm probably one of the most people who could do that. What's wrong with my brain today? I'm someone who could really benefit from that advice. I tend to want to think of myself in certain ways, and I tend to want to defend that, and I tend to want to be really rigid on myself about how I do things, and because I want to hold up these ideas of this is the kind of person I am. And sometimes that's not authentic. So I love just embracing what's happening in the moment and who I am in this moment, and letting go of sort of these ideas of what I should be or what a woman should be and what a man should be, and really just looking at who am I and who is this person in front of me, and how is the interaction rather than can we put it into a framework of how we should be. Anyway, I've talked a really long time, too long, and I hope this was a point that was interesting to you. Yeah, let's just be who we are, right?